Welcome to the video. My name is Chain. I'm always climbing, give or take. But I'm not climbing today. Today I want to talk about something that I've been doing more or less pretty much my whole life, and it's stretching. And if I could boil down my top 10 stretches, here's what they will be, here's what they are, and you should definitely focus on them. Let's hop right into number one. At the number one spot, we have the legendary pancake. Properly done, legs are spread out to the side. Look at my toes. They could either be pointed forwards or dorsiflex actively, whatever is your preferred. And then it's not about having the chest to the ground. It's about bringing your belly button completely flat to the floor. If you do it really well, you can even start to rotate your body into almost what appears to be kind of like a split position or like a middle split position. What makes the pancake such a good stretch is that it really opens up your hip in a very functional, applicable way. Because let's say you're trying to be athletic or something, right? You always have your hips behind your knees and body, and your feet in front. And then for whatever reason, if you need to go really wide, you can. Whereas something like the middle splits, your knees are not in front. Your knees are directly in line with your hips or slightly behind even. Therefore, the pancake is not only really good for just general hip mobility, but if you're doing anything athletic that requires you to actually open up your hips, I would say that the pancake is very applicable for it. Not to say the middle splits isn't awesome. Speaking of the middle splits, coming in at the number 2 spot, and no particular order, by the way, is indeed that middle splits. Very similarly to the pancake, it also helps open up your hips, but in a slightly different angle. At number 3, we have the front splits. The interesting thing about the front split is that it's not a bilateral stretch, meaning you're not hitting the both sides of your body in the same manner as you do with the pancake or the middle splits. Instead, one leg is focusing on hip flexor and the other leg is on hamstring. And when you combine good hip flexor mobility with good hamstring mobility, you are then able to execute the front split. I will say one of the best things about doing a front split, and something that I kind of find, is that when you are performing the action, ideally you want to be looking forwards with your hips directly perpendicular to your leg. Right now, I'm not doing it perfectly because I still got a little bit of ways to go. However, I find this trying to rotate your hips while keeping one leg in front and one leg in back a nice little muscular challenge. It is also about having the muscular control to rotate your hips at will. And so it makes it a pretty good stretch. Coming in at number 4, we have what's known as the hero's pose. There's a couple of variations on how you can do it. The way I like to do it, and the way I recommend everyone to do it, is to be on your toes. What that's gonna do is it's gonna add a little bit of stretch into your toes, force them to extend a little bit. If you're not used to it, you're definitely gonna feel it in your toes right when you first begin. Also, because we're in this position with the knee fully flexed, we get that kneecap to align itself within the legs. I'm not so sure that's true or not, but when I do it, definitely feels pretty good. And because we're already in this position, the quad is already being lengthened. In order to increase the amount of length on it, we simply lean back, pulling on the muscle while keeping the knee on the ground. In doing so, this creates a tremendous amount of stretch going through the quads, and it hits both quads at the same time. That is not all. You can go ahead and add a little bit more into the hip flexor. If all you do is decide to squeeze your glutes, you squeeze your glutes, that's gonna help elevate your hips. It's gonna stretch this a little bit more. And over time, you're gonna become really comfortable in that hero's pose position. And if you wanna increase the stretch on the quads, all you have to do is take your knees and bring them together. In doing so, that right there is gonna stretch out the quads like no stretch you have ever done before. And so the hero's pose is probably the greatest stretch I can think of for the quads and a little bit of hip flexor. Not the greatest for the hip flexor, but again, really fantastic for the quads. And it's so nice because gravity is just pulling you down the whole time. You can almost just sit into it passively, and as long as you spend enough time in it, you'll get better over time. But of course, I am more of an active stretcher. Next, at number 5, we have what I consider to be my worst stretch within my repertoire, and that is just the basic pike where you fold your body over, sometimes known as a sitting forward fold or a standing forward fold, or just a forward fold depending on how you want to look at it. The great thing about this pike position is that not only does it require good hamstring flexibility, good calf flexibility, but it directly ties into that lower back mobility flexibility as well. Because if your lower back is tight, it's hard to go down. If the posterior of your leg is tight, it's hard to go down as well. So by combining both weaknesses and or strengths, we're able to hit both of this posteriorness all within one nice stretch. In terms of applicability to things outside of the stretch itself, unless you're a gymnast or you do something where you have to have both legs up in the air at once, I don't really find the applicability of this stretch to be that high. However, because it's so difficult, at least in my opinion, it's just a good general stretch for you to do. Definitely do it. Number 6, and coming in as the last stretch for the lower body, is the egg, the third world squat, the Asian squat, the low squat hold, whatever you want to call it. I was almost tempted to not put this on as a stretch, but in this modern day and era of a lot of sitting, there's a lot of people that cannot hold this stretch. What this stretch does is it's phenomenal for the ankles. Forces that good ankle extension, forces that knee over toes, a little bit of action. So it's that good, nice full flexion of the knee as well. And if you get really good at this stretch, it's weird to say really good because you don't really need to get really good at this stretch. You just need to get semi-decent at it. You'll be able to more or less maintain this position. Also, maintain this position with a tall spine for almost a limitless amount of time because this is just a natural resting position. The egg won't necessarily enhance your flexibility. However, it is just a very basic, rudimentary stretch pose that you should have down. And so do it. Coming in at number 7, probably the best stretch for the upper body in the entire world. It's just that nice, very basic dead hang. In order to make it even more awesomer than what it already is, when you are hanging, because we really want to open it up, we want to make sure that our chest is hanging in front of our bodies in order to acquire that action. All it really takes is a pinching of the scaps. It will not necessarily be the most comfortable thing in the world because you're doing it in a very active manner, but guarantee you do that stretch enough times and you will maintain the shoulder mobility to be able to raise your hands up and behind your head, which is a bit of a sad thing because a lot of people can't do that nowadays. And now, of course, there is the added bonus that anytime you perform a dead hang, you're just naturally decompressing the spine, which feels fantastic. Coming in at number 8, we have the lovely stretch known as the Cobra. While, yes, when performing the movement, we get this nice decompression of the spine, along with this nice extension of the spine while we're getting lifted upwards. Though something people don't pay attention to will have to be the pressure that's applied onto the wrist whenever you're holding the Cobra position. You see, in order to actually keep yourself upright, you need to have a fair amount or a decent amount of pressure into your wrist. Now this will serve as a conditioning factor for your wrist. A lot of old people, whenever they fall and they try to catch themselves with their wrists that they haven't used in years, snap, crackle, pop, not good. In order to help prevent that, and this just doesn't have to be old people obviously, we can do something nice and simple. And while we are getting a nice stretch going along our spine, and this stretch also stretches out the stomach because of the extension type of leaning back factor, we also get to do a little bit of conditioning for our wrist. So I think it's a double whammy, one would say. And just one quick tip for the Cobra. Whenever you're doing this movement, it's not about trying to push yourself backwards. Not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is elevate our torso up nice and high. Coming in at number 9. There are many names for this. I just call them handcuffs. Basically, you grab your hands behind your back, extend your elbows, and then you lift as high as you can. Using a table, frame, or ledge, you can more or less repeat the same action, and now you place your hands on it, and then you could lower yourself into a sit position to acquire a greater amount of stretch. Not only does this stretch allow you to open up your chest, and you may agree with me on this next point or not, but when you're doing this stretch, you're now working with your scapulas, making them smash into one another. I say smash, but it's mainly more like they're just almost kind of touching. And now that you're in this really tight position, what you're never in more or less on a daily basis, it just teaches you how to use your body in all its possible ranges of motion. And I think that's pretty neat. And finally, coming in at number 10, we use our hands every single day. Rather important if you ask me. And in order to keep them as nice, healthy, longevity as much as possible, we want to make sure that the flexors and the extensors stay nice and loose. And therefore, we have a very basic wrist stretch. It doesn't need to be done like this. The main purpose and takeaway is all we need to do is apply a little bit of pressure to the ground with a straight arm and then lean forwards towards the knuckles to apply a little bit of a stretch. It works a little bit better if the hand is turned away from the person. Now get this nice forearm stretch going on. Likewise, if we take the hand, place the top of the knuckles onto the ground, we can do the exact same thing and it'll hit the extensors. Not exclusive to the ground, can also be done just like this and just like that. The point is the fingers move because these move. And if we only ever focus about this and forget the origins or where the movement becomes from, then at the end of the day, you might start to develop problems here where the solution would have been just to make sure everything is nice and loose to begin with. And that was my top 10 stretches that I think if you master, you will more or less have a very, very nice flexible body. Now, can you do more stretches? Yes. Can you reduce the number of stretches you do? Yes, of course. At the end of the day, all that's really important is that you put high effort into 1 or 2 stretches. Make sure you improve upon that, and then you start to expand your web of flexibility. Now you know.